A number of years ago, something happened that truly changed my life. Now, what happened probably wouldn't have been that big a deal to most people, but it shook me to the core. It shook me so much that it changed the way I look at things, fundamentally. And when you fundamentally change the way you look at things, that's always the start of real change. What happened was this, is I was part of a great small company, mid-sized company, and we sold ourselves to a larger company. And one of the ways that they talked us into selling to them was they said, we are different than anybody else you're talking to because we have a purpose. We have a higher order that our company makes the world a better place, and we just happen to make money doing it, not vice versa. They then told us what the purpose was. And we were really inspired by it, and they told us it lived everywhere in their company, and it was what they did. Sounds pretty cool, right? We thought so, and we sold our company to them. Well, now a year later, actually less than that, about 9 months later, it became very clear that this purpose wasn't real. Yes, it was on their website, it was on the employee handbooks, but no way, shape, or form did this company live, operate, or do anything actualize this purpose. In fact, many of their strategies, many of their business operations, and certainly the way they treated people went directly against this purpose. And I was incredibly distraught about this. I was so disillusioned, I was so upset, but most of all, I was sad. And the reason why I was sad was I knew I had to leave this company. I couldn't stay at a company where they said they were this, but were actually this, and particularly when I so disagreed with this. But the question I had to start asking myself was, okay, if I'm not going to do that, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? And what I found as I asked myself this question more and more is, paradoxically, I kept running back to the purpose, where you think at that point I'd be running away from it. And the reason why I kept running back to it was that I knew in my brain, and more importantly in my heart, that that purpose could have been great. It could have truly created a great company all the way through. And so I started asking myself another series of questions. And those questions were, are there companies out there that have a purpose that in some way makes the world better, and that just happens to lead them to success? And I said, and do these companies operationalize it? Do they truly, truly live it? And if so, how do they do that? So I became obsessed by these questions, and obsessed is really, I look back on it, is not too strong a word. I kept thinking about this over and over and over again. And I ended up going on a journey, about a 2 or 3 year journey. And I went out to look and try and find these companies and see if they really existed and to learn as much as I could about them. And as I went on this journey, I started collecting stories, because what I realized is that stories will tell you if something's real. Stories will tell you how something's work, and it'll tell you if it does work. So I went on this journey, this expedition, this exploration, to try and find these companies, and I was collecting these stories more and more as I found the right companies. And I was putting them in my exploration backpack, and my backpack was getting heavier. And I made I really started developing some knowledge and some insights and some realizations, and more as I went along. And finally, I got to the point where I said, I have some deep insights here. And here are a couple of them that are really important. The first is this. There are 3 different types of companies out there. The first, there's one type of company, and sadly there are way too many of these right now. In fact, most companies in America right now fit in this category. These are companies that really, truly don't have a purpose other than returning maximum shareholder value, which means maximum profits. So what I did is I took these companies and I quickly put them over there. Then I found a second group of companies, and I think these are the saddest companies of all. These are companies that claim and purport to have a purpose, a bigger purpose, but they don't live it. They don't operationalize it. They don't breathe it. It ends up being a big nothing. It ends up being a blank shot at best, and a contradiction and a hypocrisy at worst. Took those companies and put them over here. But what I did find was exactly what I was hoping I would find. I wasn't sure I would find it, but I did find it. I found a magical group of third companies. Many of these companies you've heard of, most of them you haven't. But these companies truly have a purpose that in some way makes the world a better place, and they live this purpose. They breathe it. They operationalize it. And as I dug deeper into those companies, I found this out. I found that all of these companies, whether they're big or small, whether they are in this industry or that industry, that they have 5 key things in common, every single one of them. And here are the 5 things. The first thing is they grow Kind of counterintuitive, right? But these companies grow again and again and again, and as their category gets disrupted, which always happens in business, particularly now, they're usually the disruptor, or if there is another disruptor, they soon play leapfrog, and they maintain leadership of their category. The second thing I found is that these companies are incredibly creative. There is something about having a higher purpose, a higher order, and living that order that just breeds creativity and innovation. In fact, when I looked at it and I studied it, the rate of innovation of all these companies, nearly all these companies, no matter what category they were in, well exceeded the industry average. The third thing was that every single one of these companies is courageous. You can bet, particularly in this day and age, that if you have a vision, if you have a purpose, that you are living and you are making very public to everybody inside your company and out, and that purpose is not making money, that you're going to get challenged. And these companies do get challenged again and again and again and again. They get challenged in big ways and small ways. And what happens inevitably every time this happens is this pattern. When they get challenged, it looks at first like it's going to be bad for the company, and then they stick by their purpose despite all these heavy winds to give up on it, and they end up being better for them. This particularly happens, as I said, in the big ways. The fourth thing I found, and this is the thing I was really looking for more than anything else, was that these companies that do this, they know how to operationalize their purpose. And they know how to operationalize it because they take the time to do it. They take the resources, they take money, they take time, and they make it a priority. And they, as one company puts it, we have a supply chain for our purpose, so that our purpose picks up speed as it moves through the organization rather than lose speed. And the fifth thing I found was a total surprise. And it was a surprise because it was more than I could have hoped for. But it gradually became clear to me, bit by bit, as I was studying these companies. And that fifth thing is this. These companies truly change lives for the better. They change the lives of the people who work there. They change the lives of the people who buy from them. They change the lives of people who invest in them, and over and over and over again. Now, one company that really popped to mind, and one company that has so many great stories, but I'm going to tell you one that I like the most, is Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines has a purpose statement. All these companies, by the way, they have purpose statements that are very carefully worded that they live by. Southwest's purpose statement is this. We connect people to the things that matter most to them through a friendly, reliable, low-cost carrier. And they know that friendly is the linchpin to that. So they very publicly state that they have three priorities. And their three priorities are this. We care about our employees first. We put our employees first. We put our customers second. And we put our shareholders third. Now, if you think about it, that's exactly inverted to what most companies do these days, particularly publicly traded companies. They put their shareholders first, far and away. They put their customers second, and they put their employees third if they put them anywhere at all. Now, you can bet with a prioritization list and a purpose statement like this that Southwest is going to be challenged. And they are again and again and again. But never more so than about 20, 25 years ago. And what happened was, at that time, low-cost carriers had burst on the scene. They were totally disrupting the industry, and they were taking it over, and they were catching, and everybody was starting to fly them. They were capturing share. And what happened is typically is exactly what you would expect. More and more low-cost carriers started popping on the scene, but more importantly, or as importantly, the big guys, Delta, United, American, started getting down into this. And the way they got down into this, what they had to do was they had to cut amenities that we were all used to at that time. Cut these amenities down so that they could get their cost basis down so they could compete in this airline. And very predictably, this started producing conflict. It started producing tension. And where that conflict was most manifesting itself was where the rubber hits the road, between their flyers and the people who interact with them, which means gate attendants, flight attendants, and pilots. And we still see this now, don't we? But back then, this was kind of new. And so it seemed like every week there was a story in the paper about a big trauma of some kind where this happened. And every single time this happened, the airlines in general would basically take this position on it. The customer is always right. No matter what happened, we were probably wrong and you were certainly right. We need your business. We don't want you to leave. Please stay with us. What can we do to keep you? Every airline with the exception of Southwest Airlines. Inevitably, it started happening to Southwest Airlines too. But when it did happen, they made a very public proclamation that got a lot of publicity at the time. And it came from Herb Kelleher, their CEO. And what he said was, you know what? People are starting to abuse our employees. If you want to abuse our employees, go fly someone else. We don't want your business. Again, if you want to abuse our employees, go fly someone else. We don't want your business. Well, at the time, no one could believe it because the airline business was incredibly competitive. And everybody knew what was happening, and it seemed like what he was doing was he was cutting off a whole swath of customers that might seem arrogant, and these customers would go fly someone else, would sink the financial results of the company, would sink the stock and all that. Well, what happened was interesting, and part of it was predictable, but a lot of it was unpredictable. The predictable part is this, is his employees were overjoyed, and there were stories about this. It was great PR, that they were overjoyed, they were celebrating it because their company was truly living their purpose, and their company had their back, and they knew it. To be expected. What was not expected is this. Bookings actually went up in Southwest Airlines. And contrary to what everybody thought, over the next 12 months, Southwest Airlines stock went up by 20%. So it's a classic example of how when you have a purpose and you live by it, that your employees will reward you, your consumers will reward you, and even Wall Street will reward you. Now there's another company that doesn't get nearly enough credit in America. It's a small company. It's based out of Bridgeport, Connecticut. It's called Two Roads Breweries. And Two Roads Breweries is they have a really interesting purpose statement, really unique. And their purpose statement is this, and it comes off that Robert Frost poem that we've all probably seen, and that's this. There are two roads you can take. We always take the road less traveled because that road's more interesting. Kind of unique, right? A little bit abstract and maybe a little weird, but it's not weird to them. And the reason why it's not weird to them is they put it into practice because what they do for everybody who works there, whether they're sweeping the floors, whether they're making the beer, whether they're executives up here, is screened, and they're screened on this basis. They are presented with problems during the interview process, and they're always given different alternatives, different ways they can go. And what they want to see is, number one, do their employees fully consider the options, but do they take the road, do they take the path that is predictable, safe, stable, but yields few rewards? Not big rewards, high or low. Or do they take the path that might be a little more dangerous, more interesting, more innovative, but also more risky? And 100% of the time, they hire employees here. They don't want employees over here. And again, this is top to bottom. So the craft beer segment has changed quite a bit since they've gotten into business because they joined at exactly the right time. The craft beer segment was growing like crazy, and they were going along with it, even ahead of it. But since then, things have changed dramatically. Beer consumption in America is down. Craft beer business is flat. And what's happened is when Two Roads started, there were 1,700 craft beer makers. There are now 7,000. On top of that, all the big guys, Miller, Anheuser-Busch, are getting in the category. So there are a lot of people fighting over a relatively stagnant size business. And what's happening is very predictable, which is a lot of craft beer companies are going out of business. A lot of them are consolidating just to stay alive. And nobody's growing. It seems like nobody's having a good time. Well, guess what? Two Roads is still having a very good time because they continue to grow 20 to 30% a year. And they are growing in one way. They're growing through innovation. They continue to make new products again and again, new beer products, new brew products that consumers want and buy. They're innovating their way to growth. They're staying on the path to go through innovation. Now, what's interesting about this is a couple things. Number one is that they're innovating, and that all the growth is coming through that. But when you think about it, it's not that surprising, right? It's not that surprising because everybody who works there goes down this path. So innovation and creativity is in the DNA and in the gray matter of everybody who works there. But here's the story inside the story that's really interesting. I was talking to the CEO of this company about 2 months ago, and he was telling me something really interesting, which is that in the last couple of years, the innovation, the ideas for the products that they're innovating are actually not coming from the people who are supposed to be doing that. They're not coming from the brewmasters. They're not coming from the marketing people. They're coming from everywhere in the company. And they're coming from that because innovation is truly celebrated there. Any idea is a good idea, but again, it lives in their culture in every single person. A third company, a great purpose-based company, is CVS Drug. And they have a beautiful purpose statement. It's beautiful in its simplicity. And their purpose statement is this: we help people on the path to better health. And it's something that they believe in and they talk about throughout their entire organization. But there was an opportunity. Some might call it a problem, but they recognized it as an opportunity with their purpose statement a few years ago. And that was this. CVS started out, like most drug chains, as independent drugstores that got bigger and bigger and bigger. And as they did so, and what drugstores did back then, they sold cigarettes. And as CVS got bigger and bigger and bigger, they sold cigarettes and more cigarettes and more cigarettes. And they weren't really getting any pressure from anybody on this. But they put pressure on themselves. They recognized that this was contrary to what they stood for. And so they made an announcement that stunned everybody. They said, you know what? This is contrary to our purpose, what we believe in, what we think is going to take us into the future very successfully, what's been the recipe for our success in the past. We're going to stop selling cigarettes. And on one hand, people were cheering, obviously, for the reasons you can imagine. But a lot of people were not cheering. And who were not cheering were investors. Because, you see, at that point in time, CVS, the sale of cigarettes at CVS Drugs were $2 billion a year. Not 2 million, not 20 million, not 200 million, $2 billion a year. So everybody said sales are going to get killed, their stock's going to get crushed. But again, that didn't happen. Their sales weren't radically affected. And in fact, in the next 18 months after they stopped selling cigarettes, their stock went up 50%. Now, I started this out by saying that something happened that changed my life. And what changed my life was certainly secondhand part of this knowledge that I gained, but more importantly, what changed my life is what I did with this knowledge. Because what occurred to me as I was going down this journey was that I needed to start my own company. And I wanted to start a company that had a purpose, and a company that lived its purpose, because I believed in it wholeheartedly. I saw how it would have been blank shot where I was before, but I saw the potential of it. And this company ended up being, we had a purpose statement. This purpose statement was this: 3 words: fearless, inventive, and humanistic. And those 3 words meant a lot, because we were going to be fearless. We were going to be the little guys going against the big guys. And we wanted to be fearless. We only wanted to hire fearless employees, because that was going to get us to where we wanted to go. And we only wanted clients who were going to be fearless. We wanted to be inventive, because we're in a creative business, and we only wanted creative people there. And if you're, the only way you can achieve real, true incrementality to your clients is if you're giving them creativity and something new. But the most important part was humanism, the humanistic. Because I recognized that if we were going to be successful going against the big guys, particularly with a purpose like this, that we were going to have to operate as teams. And you can only have high-functioning teams if you have a humanistic environment. And we had to remember our clients were humans, and the people we're marketing to at the end of the day were humans. Well, this company was a success almost from the get-go. We exceeded the industry average in growth for 10 years. Inc. magazine named us one of the fastest growing companies in America. But most importantly, we were a regular on most of the best places to work lists. And this was good. It was good from the standpoint that it was good to get the industry recognition. It was good for the personal awards. But what was great about this is I got to see how these companies, how you could truly change lives by doing this. I got to see it firsthand because I saw how others had done it. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to conclude by asking you all to close your eyes, and truly close your eyes. And I want you to imagine something really important. Imagine that we live in a world, in the future, that we live in a world where all the institutions, all the organizations that you deal with have a purpose. And this purpose is beyond any transactional value, any impact, any making money. They live this purpose and they operate against it. And this purpose, in fact, leads to their success. It doesn't hurt their success, which is what you might think. And just imagine what a better world this would be, and imagine how many lives would be changed. Thank you.